arrogant boxing champion challenges a young Jamaican girl to humiliate her. But what happened next left everyone speechless. "Look what we have here," Victoria Sterling scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain as she pointed at the newcomer. An 18-year-old girl had just stepped into Manhattan's most elite boxing gym. "Lost your way to the community center, sweetheart?" The rhythmic thuds of fists striking heavy bags came to an abrupt halt. Every head in the gym turned toward Keisha Campbell, a slender girl with a battered sports bag slung over her shoulder and sneakers so worn they looked like they'd survived a war. Her dark skin stood out against the pristine, polished space where monthly membership fees cost more than 3 months of minimum wage. Victoria Sterling, the reigning women's world champion for 2 straight years, wasn't just famous for her devastating punches. At 26, she'd built a brand on trash talk and viral controversy. Her latest Instagram flex, captioned, "When you're born superior, equality is just a costume for the weak," had already racked up 500,000 likes. "Sorry," Keisha muttered, double-checking the address on her cracked phone. "I thought this was the scholarship program." Victoria's laugh tore through the gym like a siren. "Scholarship program? Honey, this isn't charity. We train real fighters here, not experiments." But Keisha Campbell hadn't crossed an ocean for charity. She had landed in the U.S. just 6 months earlier, carrying the weight of her Jamaican family's dreams on her back. They had scraped together every penny to send her abroad. Now she scrubbed office floors 16 hours a day just to afford a tiny room in the Bronx, shared with 3 strangers. The Youth Scholarship Program was her one shot at real training. "The program exists," a deep voice cut in. Tom Rodriguez, the veteran trainer and gym owner, stepped out of his office, holding a folder. "And Keisha Campbell is on the approved list." Victoria rolled her eyes like it was beneath her. "Seriously, Tom? Turning my training facility into a community project? My sponsors won't like this." "They pay me for results, Victoria, not for your opinion," Tom replied flatly. But Victoria wasn't finished. She stalked up to Keisha, her smile cold and sharp. "You want to train here? Then prove it." The gym froze in silence. Everyone knew what that meant. "A friendly spar," Victoria continued, savoring every word. 3 rounds. You last. You stay. You don't—" She waved her hand dismissively. "Then you're out." Every eye was on Keisha. Everyone expected her to break, to beg, to walk away. This was meant to crush her before she even began. Instead, a quiet fire burned in her gaze. "I accept," she said calmly. Victoria's smirk faltered for a split second. "Are you sure? When I'm done with you, you'll wonder if dreaming big was worth the pain." "I'm sure," Keisha replied, and for the first time since she stepped into the gym, she smiled. What Victoria didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that back in Kingston, Jamaica, Keisha Campbell had already earned a name that carried fear in the ring. They called her Lightning, and just like lightning, her real strength only revealed itself when the storm came crashing down. While Victoria was already scheming how to turn the humiliation into viral gold for her social media, Tom Rodriguez noticed the sharp gleam in Keisha's eyes. It sent a chill down his spine, one he only felt when spotting raw, undeniable talent hidden behind what others mistook for fragility. If this clash of pride, prejudice, and determination is already moving you, make sure to subscribe, because what unfolded in those 3 rounds left the boxing world stunned. To this day, people still ask, how did a girl from the Bronx, with nothing but grit, rewrite the rules of a sport controlled by the elite? News of the sparring match spread through the gym like wildfire. Within an hour, trainers, fighters, and even sports journalists were cramming inside to witness the showdown. Victoria Sterling versus an unknown Jamaican underdog. The perfect recipe for the kind of spectacle social media devoured. 3 rounds, 16-ounce gloves, Tom declared, trying to disguise his worry as he set the rules. No betting, no live stream, just sparring. Victoria smirked. Relax, Tom. This'll be over quick. I doubt it'll even reach round 2. Already live on Instagram, she held her phone high for her 2 million followers. Guys, you won't believe this. Some random girl wants to fight me. I'm about to give her a lesson in humility she'll never forget. The comments came flooding in. Destroy her, Victoria. Put her in her place. Show her why you're the queen. While Victoria basked in her spotlight, Keisha walked quietly to the locker room. No shaky hands. They never shook before a fight, but her heartbeat drummed with a dangerous mix of restrained fury and memories she usually kept buried. Tom followed close behind. Keisha, listen, you don't have to do this. I get that the scholarship means a lot, but her arrogance isn't worth you getting hurt. I'm not going to get hurt, she answered calmly, sliding her fists into the borrowed gloves. She's been a world champion for 2 years, Keisha. She's got technique, knockout power, experience. And I have something she'll never have. Tom raised a brow. What's that? Keisha locked eyes with him. Hunger. The word cut through the small locker room like a blade. Tom had trained hundreds of fighters over 30 years, but rarely had he heard it spoken with such fire. That look in her eyes, he'd seen it before, but only in predators who entered the ring not to win, but to survive. He sat down beside her. Tell me then, why take this fight? Why not just ignore her taunts? Keisha closed her eyes. Memories surged back. The harsh streets of Kingston, her mother's voice screaming for her to stop. Fists cracking against faces with ruthless precision, the name Lightning whispered in fear through back alleys. Because I've lived this story before, she whispered. People like Victoria think they can crush us with words, with contempt, with their certainty that we're beneath them. But they forget something important. And what's that? Tom asked. That people like me don't fight for sport. We fight to exist. A shiver ran down Tom's back. Her words felt less like motivation and more like prophecy, as if she had already seen Victoria's downfall before even stepping in the ring. Meanwhile, outside, Victoria kept laughing into her phone camera, completely unaware that her opponent wasn't just stepping into a spar, she was stepping into destiny. Check out those shoes, Victoria sneered, pointing at Keisha's battered sneakers sitting in the corner of the locker room. I bet she's never even touched a real ring, probably just learned boxing from YouTube tutorials. The gym filled with laughter, though not everyone joined in. A few of the veterans stayed quiet. Something about Keisha's calm acceptance of the challenge, the way she carried herself without a flicker of hesitation, made them uneasy. Marcus Williams, once a middleweight champion and now a respected trainer, leaned toward his sparring partner. You see that? He whispered. That's not nerves. I've seen that look before. The quiet ones, the ones who don't need to prove anything, those are the ones you should fear. But Victoria was too deep in her own arrogance to notice the warning signs. Facing the cameras, she smirked. You know the problem with people from third world countries? They mistake struggle for skill. Just because life is hard, they think it means they can fight. Right then, Keisha stepped out of the locker room. She wore nothing fancy, just a tank top and shorts, but her arms told a different story. Muscles honed through years of survival were etched beneath her skin, her movements sharp and precise, like a predator conserving energy before the strike. Ready to learn? Victoria asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Always, Keisha replied evenly. What Victoria Sterling didn't realize, what she couldn't have imagined, was that Lightning Campbell had been fighting since she was 8 years old. Not for glory, not for sport, but because survival left her no other choice. On the streets of Kingston, losing meant going hungry. By 12, she was taking down boys 3 years older in underground bouts that bought her family one more week of food. By 16, her name was whispered as legend. Not for savagery, but for a terrifying ability to read opponents like an open book and strike back faster than they could blink. That gift earned her a nickname that clung to her ever since, Lightning. When she finally secured her visa to America, Keisha swore she would never fight again. But some promises break the moment someone tries to strip away your dignity. As Tom tightened Keisha's gloves, he noticed something that startled him. Her hands were loose, relaxed, but her muscles were coiled like steel cables, like someone who had spent a lifetime training in silence. "Keisha," Tom asked carefully, "can I be straight with you? You really never fought before?" Keisha gave the smallest of smiles, the kind that hides more than it reveals. "Define never," she said. While Victoria preened for her followers, pumping out 17 Instagram stories mocking the so-called Jamaican amateur, the mood in the gym was shifting. Tom Rodriguez, with 3 decades of experience shaping fighters, couldn't ignore what his instincts screamed. True power doesn't see out. It waits. It hides. And in Keisha Campbell, he saw it. Something that defied logic. Something dangerous. Something extraordinary. Her hands told the first secret. No rookie calluses. Her movements, too sharp, too clean. And that calmness, unnatural for someone about to spar against a world champion. "Keisha," Tom called as she tightened her gloves. "Show me a few basics, just so I know where you stand." What unfolded in the next 5 minutes shattered every assumption Tom had about talent. Keisha glided around the ring like she was weightless, each punch on the heavy bag slicing through the air with surgical accuracy. These weren't the clumsy strikes of a beginner. This was mastery, the kind he'd only seen in veterans with decades of blood and sweat behind them. "My God," Tom muttered under his breath. "Who is this girl, really?" Then the gym door creaked open. Keisha froze. A man walked in, broad-shouldered, scarred hands, eyes hardened by a lifetime of battles. Winston Campbell, 50 years old. Her uncle. He had flown straight from Miami the moment he heard about the fight. "Lightning," he said. One word. The name snapped through the gym like a gunshot. Old-timers in the room stiffened. Some frowned, struggling to place the legend attached to that nickname. "Uncle Winston?" Keisha's voice cracked with something she hadn't shown all day, fear. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see if my niece has lost her damn mind," he said, his Jamaican accent thick and heavy. "I thought we agreed those days were done." Tom, baffled but intrigued, stepped closer. "Wait, you two know each other?" Winston studied him, debating how much of the truth to spill. Finally he said, "I've known this girl since she was 8, and I promise you, Victoria Sterling has no clue what she's walking into." Meanwhile, across the gym, Victoria had her phone out, recording TikTok after TikTok. She smirking, but into the camera. "Guys, check this out. She even dragged her family here to watch her embarrassment. Cute, right? At least they'll have something to cry about later." Her comment section exploded with support. "Victoria's gonna wreck that girl. Teach her not to mess with Americans. Show her what real boxing looks like." Winston glanced at Victoria, shook his head. "Arrogant, just like the ones Lightning used to humble back in Kingston." "Uncle, please," Keisha whispered urgently. "Don't tell anyone. I don't want them to know." "Know what?" Tom asked, suspicion deepening. Winston let out a long breath. "Tom, right? You look like a good man, so let me tell you something that'll change how you see this fight." He pointed toward Keisha, now shadowboxing alone in the corner. That girl was the most feared street fighter Kingston ever produced. At 12, she dropped men 3 times her size. By 15, her name alone made gangsters step aside. Lightning. Campbell wasn't just a nickname, it was a warning. He paused, eyes heavy with memory. She gave it all up when she got her visa. Promised she'd never step into a ring again. Tom stared at Keisha, awestruck. Then why fight Victoria? Because, Winston said coldly, some people mistake kindness for weakness. And Lightning never let anyone underestimate her for being black, for being a woman, or for where she came from. On the far side, Victoria was still filming, now bragging into a call with her manager. Michael, this fight's gonna blow up online. A world champ versus some amateur? Sponsors are gonna eat this up. It's pure domination. Her manager chuckled through the speakerphone. Fine. Just make sure you don't beat her too badly, Victoria. We don't want any lawsuits on our hands. Victoria threw her head back and laughed. Michael, relax. This'll be over so fast, she won't even have the chance to hurt herself. Her voice dripped with arrogance. Winston, listening nearby, narrowed his eyes. He leaned toward Tom. Want some advice? Put your money on Lightning. Tom frowned. Lightning? Why? Because Victoria Sterling might be a world champion, Winston said, his tone sharp, but she's never fought for survival. She's never had to win just to eat. Lightning isn't here for show. She's here to make a statement. Just then, Keisha walked over, sweat shining on her face from an intense workout. Uncle Winston, what are you telling Tom? The truth, he replied without hesitation. That you're not the helpless victim this American thinks you are. Keisha's eyes flicked around the gym. Other fighters were watching her now, watching with something new in their gaze. Not pity. Respect. Uncle, I don't want to... Don't want to what? Winston pressed. Show them who you are? Lightning, you've spent months scrubbing toilets trying to build a new life. But when someone tries to humiliate you because of your skin, your past, your roots, no new life can wash that away. It's in your blood. Tom felt a chill. He leaned closer. Keisha, tell me something. Why did you really take this fight? Keisha went silent. Her eyes locked on Victoria, who was across the room recording content, oblivious and smug. When Keisha finally spoke, her voice carried a razor's edge Tom had never heard before. Because people like Victoria Sterling think they can belittle us, mock us, reduce us to nothing but jokes for their followers. She looked at me and saw an easy victim, someone to use for content. What she doesn't understand is where I grew up, respect isn't handed out, it's earned. And when someone tries to strip away your dignity, her lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't warm. It was dangerous. Sometimes lightning has to remind the world why storms are feared. Across the gym, Victoria strutted for the camera, completely unaware that the ground was shifting beneath her feet. Everyone watching knew this was no longer just an exhibition match. It was about to become the mom. And when years of silent humiliation would be answered, with fists that had been forged on the harshest streets in the world, the bell rang. The fighters met in the center of the ring. Victoria attacked first, her jabs slicing the air, missing by fractions of a second. What the? She muttered, shocked. Keisha moved like smoke, untouchable. Her feet glided over the canvas, as if she already knew where every punch would land before Victoria even threw it. Stay still! Victoria shouted, throwing harder, faster. Then it happened. Victoria overextended on a cross, her balance slipping, and Keisha struck. Her left hand snapped forward with surgical precision, crashing against Victoria's cheek. The sound cracked through the gym like a gunshot. Victoria stumbled back, clutching her face in disbelief. Impossible, she whispered. But Keisha was already moving again. What followed was no ordinary fight. It was a masterclass. Keisha wasn't just throwing punches. She was orchestrating a storm, every strike calculated, every dodge deliberate, every counterattack a lesson. Victoria tried to use her size and reach, but it was like trying to catch lightning with bare hands. For every punch she threw, 3 came back. For every step forward, she was pushed 2 steps back. "Who is this girl?" someone in the crowd shouted. And in that moment, the entire gym understood. This was no longer about boxing. It was about something far greater. Winston's eyes glistened with pride as he watched from the sidelines. He whispered with a smile, "Lightning Campbell." The name carried weight now. More than a nickname, it was a statement. The decisive moment came in the second round. Victoria, already panting, sweat streaking down her bruised face, realized the horrible truth. She had underestimated her opponent, and it had cost her everything. Those arrogant posts she had blasted across social media were still being shared, but the tide had turned. The comments were vicious, mocking her downfall. "Victoria's getting schooled by an amateur. Where's the world champion now? That Jamaican girl is tearing her apart." From the corner, Jerry screamed desperate instructions, but Victoria could barely hear him over the deafening roar of the crowd. The same audience that once idolized her was now chanting for her opponent. That's when Keisha stepped forward, calm, collected, and ready to finish what she had started. She locked eyes with Victoria, who was stumbling backward, trapped against the ropes. "Lightning was never just a nickname," Keisha said in a low, steady voice. It was a warning. What followed was almost unreal. Her hands moved faster than the cameras could keep up. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. 4 strikes in under 2 seconds, each one landing with surgical accuracy. The sound of gloves against flesh echoed like gunshots. Victoria's body crumpled to the canvas, collapsing as though the very foundation beneath her had given way. The crowd erupted. Screams, cheers, chants. Phones shot up in every direction, capturing the moment that would circle the globe within hours. Tom, the referee, counted loud enough for the whole gym to hear. 10. Knockout. The world champion lay on the floor, her legs betraying her, unable to rise. For the first time in her career, Victoria Sterling had been knocked out by the very woman she had mocked as a charity case. Keisha didn't raise her arms in arrogance. Instead, she calmly walked over to where Victoria was being tended by her team. Her voice was soft, but cutting like steel. "You said you wanted to teach me a lesson," she murmured. "I hope you've learned that respect isn't bought with fame, money, or the color of your skin. Respect is earned by character." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. Humiliation, yes, but buried within it, for the first time, was something that looked almost like respect. Meanwhile, Jerry had scrambled for Victoria's phone. The virus, the monster she had unleashed, was now devouring her. Her mocking Instagram stories had flipped into monuments of her defeat. Thousands of comments poured in. That's what happens when prejudice meets reality. Lightning Campbell just ended Victoria Sterling's career. Respect is earned, not bought. Jerry's face was pale. He shoved the phone into Victoria's trembling hands. "Victoria, you've lost 100,000 followers in the last hour. Sponsors are pulling out left and right. It's all over social media." Her heart sank as she scrolled through the brutal comments. The last video she had posted mocking Keisha had now become the internet's favorite symbol of poetic justice. Her arrogance had destroyed her legacy. Meanwhile, the cameras shifted back to Keisha, who stood tall in the center of the ring, surrounded by fans, their cheers deafening. Tom approached her carefully, microphone in hand. "Lightning, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why didn't you tell anyone who you really were from the very beginning?" Keisha's gaze drifted toward Victoria, who was being carried out of the gym, broken, humiliated, stripped of the pride she once flaunted. Then she spoke slowly, every word deliberate. Because some people need to dig their own grave before they realize just how deep they've fallen. The audience roared. Winston stepped forward and wrapped his niece in a tight hug, his voice thick with pride. "You're still lightning." Keisha smiled faintly and shook her head. "No, Uncle. Lightning was who I had to be to survive. Today I showed who I really am. Not someone fighting for cruelty or revenge, but someone who fights for dignity." And as the crowd filmed, cheered, and shared the knockout across every platform, one question lingered in the air. Could a single fight rewrite not only two careers, but also change how an entire community saw prejudice, privilege, and true strength? 3 months later, the contrast couldn't have been starker. Victoria Sterling, once an untouchable champion, now lived in a modest apartment after losing her Miami mansion. The viral video of her defeat had surpassed 50 million views in a week, making her the face of arrogance defeated. The same companies that once paid her millions, Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, now ignored her calls. Her manager Jerry hadn't minced words during their final conversation. "Victoria, don't you get it? This isn't just about losing a fight. It's about what you revealed about yourself. No brand wants to be tied to prejudice and arrogance. You're toxic now." Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, Keisha Campbell's world had transformed. She had just signed her first professional contract with Golden Gloves Promotions, $2 million for 3 fights, with renewal clauses reaching $50 million if she maintained her streak. She wasn't just a fighter anymore. She was a movement. Brands lined up to partner with her, not because of hype, but because of her story. Resilience, dignity, authenticity. Under Armour launched an entire campaign around her slogan, "Earned, not given." And behind closed doors, promoters whispered about something bigger, that Lightning Campbell might not just be the future of women's boxing, but the spark that could change the sport forever. "Hello, Tom. This is ESPN. We'd like to make a documentary about how you discovered Lightning Campbell." Tom Rodriguez gave a small laugh, shaking his head. "I didn't discover anything," he said truthfully. "Keisha always knew who she was. My role was simple. I just respected her before the rest of the world could see her fists in action." It was the kind of statement that summed up not only Tom's philosophy, but also the incredible journey that had unfolded since that fateful day in the gym. The gym itself had transformed almost beyond recognition. What once had been a worn-down space filled with rusty equipment had now beckoned, a beacon of hope. The scholarship program, which started as a modest idea, had grown into a national movement,